The stars had never looked so bright to Park. She stood at the observation window of the orbital station called Eternal Summit, watching Earth spin slowly below. Behind her, the great hall buzzed with the sounds of 12 alien species talking, arguing, and making deals that shaped the fate of entire worlds. Today was the most important day in human history. Today, humanity would finally join the galactic Concord. Turned away from the window and walked back toward the central platform. Her aide fell into step beside her. He was a thin man with sharp eyes that never stopped moving, always watching, always calculating. "The delegation has arrived," said quietly. High Speaker himself came. "That's unusual." Nodded. She had studied them for years. They were tall reptilian beings with scales that shifted color based on their emotions. Their empire was old, powerful, and very, very patient. In 10,000 years, they had absorbed 17 species into their dominion, not through war, through friendship, through treaties, through generous gifts that always came with invisible chains. "Stay alert," whispered back. "Smile, but stay alert." The great hall fell silent as stepped onto the central platform. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. Some looked curious. Some looked bored. A few looked hungry, like predators watching prey walk into their territory. High Speaker stood at the front of the delegation. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with scales the color of polished bronze. When he smiled, his teeth were very white and very sharp. "Ambassador Park," said, his voice deep and smooth like honey poured over stone. "We have waited long for this day. Humanity has proven itself worthy of joining our great family of civilizations." Bowed slightly. "The people of Earth are honored by your welcome, High Speaker." The ceremony began. Words were spoken in a dozen languages. Treaties were signed with technology that recorded not just signatures but intention, emotion, and commitment. They presented their gifts: terraforming engines that could turn dead rocks into living worlds, medical technology that could cure diseases humanity had fought for centuries, and faster-than-light drives that would open the entire galaxy to human exploration. On Earth, billions watched the ceremony on screens. They cheered. They cried. They celebrated in the streets. After centuries of war, disease, and struggle, humanity had finally reached the stars. They had finally found friends among the infinite darkness. Not everyone celebrated. In a military command center buried deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Commander Han watched the ceremony with cold eyes. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and a face that had forgotten how to smile. Around her, screens displayed data that the celebrating public would never see. 17 species, said to the empty room. 17 species accepted friendship. Where are they now? She pulled up historical records. The Silken Choir, the Iron Children of Vex, species that had once been proud and independent, species that had welcomed advisors into their governments, technology into their infrastructure, officers into their militaries. One by one, they had stopped being independent. One by one, they had become part of the Dominion. Not through invasion, through integration, through slow, patient absorption until one day they woke up and realized they were no longer free. Opened a secure channel. "This is Commander Han. Begin protocol. Authorization code. Remember the turtle ships." Across Earth, in hidden locations known only to a handful of people, preparations began. Secret bunkers were stocked with supplies. Hidden communication networks were tested. Weapons that did not officially exist were moved to secure locations. Han did not trust She did not trust the Galactic Concord. She did not trust anyone who offered friendship without asking anything in return. Back on Eternal Summit, the ceremony was ending. Placed a clawed hand on shoulder. His scales had shifted to a warm gold color, the sign of affection. "You will find," said softly, "that the galaxy can be a dangerous place for young species. There are threats you cannot imagine, challenges you cannot face alone, but you are not alone anymore. The Dominion will protect you. We will guide you. We will help you become everything you can be. Smiled and thanked him, but somewhere deep inside, in a place she could not name, something felt wrong. The months that followed seemed to prove her fears foolish. Advisors arrived on Earth and immediately began sharing knowledge that advanced human science by centuries. Diseases were cured. Crops grew in deserts. Clean energy flowed from reactors that produced no waste. The people of Earth had never been healthier, wealthier, or happier. Officers joined human military commands, offering their experience from thousands of years of galactic peacekeeping. They were polite. They were helpful. They never gave orders, only suggestions. But somehow, those suggestions always became policy. Captain Lee noticed the changes first. He commanded the destroyer, one of Earth's warships. Over 6 months, he watched as his crew was slowly reorganized. Human officers were transferred to new positions. Advisors took their places. The changes were always explained. The explanations always made sense. But the result was always the same. "We're being hollowed out," told his first officer, a young woman named. "Like a fruit that looks perfect on the outside but has been eaten from within." Frowned, "What can we do? The Concord treaties give them authority to reorganize our forces." "I don't know," admitted. "But I know this. If they ever decide we're a threat, we won't be able to fight back. We won't even be able to run." On Earth, Doctor reached similar conclusions through different means. He was studying physiology as part of the scientific exchange programs. What he found troubled him deeply. They were not just studying human science. They were studying humans. Every medical scan, every genetic sample, every psychological evaluation was being sent to research stations. They were learning everything about humanity, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, and their breaking points. Began keeping secret records. He told no one what he found. He trusted no one, but he prepared. Park, still serving as ambassador, began to see cracks in the golden friendship. Small things at first. Trade agreements that somehow always favored interests. Diplomatic meetings where human concerns were heard but never addressed. Representatives of other species who looked at humanity with something that might have been pity. One night, a delegate from a minor species called the approached her at a reception. He was small, with fur the color of autumn leaves and large sad eyes. "Ambassador Park," the said, his voice barely a whisper. "I should not be speaking to you, but I must. My people joined the Concord 400 years ago. They were our sponsors too. They gave us gifts. They gave us protection. They gave us everything we wanted." He paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "Now we give them everything they want. We have no choice. We have not had a choice for 300 years. Learn from us, Ambassador, while you still can." He walked away before could respond. She never saw him again. That night, contacted Commander Han through channels that officially did not exist. They talked for hours. When the conversation ended, understood what was coming. She understood what had to be done. She did not sleep that night. She sat at her window, watching the stars, and wondered how long humanity had before the trap closed around them. She would not have to wonder long. The day the sky fell began like any other morning. People went to work. Children went to school. Ships moved through space carrying cargo and passengers between Earth and the new colony stations. The sun rose over Seoul, over Sydney, bringing light to a world that had never known such peace and prosperity. Then the lights went out. Every satellite in Earth orbit stopped working at the same moment. Communication networks collapsed. Defense grids went dark. Ships drifting between worlds found their navigation systems filled with garbage data. In military command centers around the planet, screens flickered and died, replaced by a single message in script. Captain Lee was on the bridge of the when it happened. One moment he was reviewing patrol routes. The next moment, every system on his ship screamed warnings at once. "What's happening?" he demanded. His advisor, a slim reptilian officer named, simply smiled. "What was always going to happen, Captain? Please do not resist. It will be easier for everyone." Before could respond, soldiers burst onto the bridge. They had been hiding in sections of the ship that human crew were not permitted to enter. They moved with terrible efficiency, securing weapons, restraining officers, taking control of every system. Fought, he broke free from the soldiers holding him and reached for a weapon. A soldier struck him across the face, sending him crashing to the deck. Blood filled his mouth. Through blurred vision, he saw the same scene playing out on every ship in Earth's fleet. They had been betrayed from within. In Geneva, Ambassador Park was in the middle of a diplomatic meeting when the doors burst open. Soldiers flooded into the room, weapons raised. High Speaker walked in behind them, his scales now the deep red color of authority and dominance. "Ambassador Park," said, his voice no longer smooth but cold and hard, "you and your species have been found guilty of pre-integration violations. You have hidden weapons. You have maintained secret military protocols. You have resisted necessary reforms. For your own protection, humanity will now be placed under direct governance." Stood her ground. "This is illegal, the Concord Charter guarantees." "The Concord has reviewed the evidence," interrupted. "They have approved our intervention. Humanity's entry into the Concord is suspended pending the completion of corrective integration." He smiled, showing all his teeth. "You should have trusted us, Ambassador. You should have let us help you. Now we must help you whether you want it or not." Soldiers moved to arrest. Across the room, acted on instinct. He grabbed a ceremonial blade from a display case and threw it at the nearest soldier. In the confusion that followed, he ran. He ran through corridors he had memorized for exactly this moment. He ran past soldiers who were still securing the building. He ran until he reached a hidden room behind a wall that officially did not exist. Inside was a communication terminal connected to networks that did not know about. Activated the terminal and began transmitting everything. The evidence that the charges against humanity were fabricated, the recordings of officers discussing their plans, the truth about what was happening. He sent it to every human receiver he could reach. He sent it to representatives of other species who might still have honor. He sent it into the void, hoping someone would hear. Then he disappeared into tunnels that would take him far from Geneva, far from back to those who were already preparing to fight. Around Earth, the occupation began. Troops landed in every major city. Their ships filled the sky, blocking out the sun. They broadcast messages of reassurance, promising that this was temporary, that humanity would be protected, that everything would be better soon. No one believed them. But what could anyone do? Earth's military was shattered. Their ships were captured or destroyed. Their soldiers were disarmed and detained. Their leaders were arrested or hiding. They had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. They had planned for every possibility, calculated every outcome, and prepared for every form of resistance. They had studied humanity carefully. They knew that humans, like every other species they had conquered, would calculate their odds, recognize the impossibility of victory, and surrender to minimize suffering. Their psychological models were very sophisticated. They had never been wrong. Until now. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in a bunker that did not exist on any map, Commander Han watched the invasion unfold on screens powered by generators they did not know about. Around her sat a small group of officers, soldiers and civilians who had been preparing for this day for 2 years. "They've taken Seoul," one officer reported, "is surrounded. Our Pacific fleet has been captured." "Orbital defenses?" asked. "Destroyed. We have nothing in space." Nodded slowly. She had expected all of this. She had planned for all of this. They were very good at conquest. They had done it 17 times before. They knew exactly how to crush a species, how to break their will, how to make resistance seem not just impossible but pointless. But they did not know humanity. Not really. They had studied human bodies, human technology, human psychology. They had not studied human history. They had not learned about the winters at Valley Forge, the siege of Leningrad, the Long March, the resistance movements that had fought against impossible odds in every generation, in every land, in every age. They did not know that humans were most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. Stood and walked to a communication console. She entered codes that activated hidden transmitters across the planet and in secret locations throughout the solar system. She took a breath. Then she spoke. "This is Commander Hand to all human forces. Our government has fallen. Our fleet has been destroyed. Our world is occupied. They believe we are defeated. They believe we will surrender. They believe we will break." She paused. "They are wrong. We have prepared for this day. We have hidden weapons they do not know about. We have built networks they cannot find. We have trained for a war they do not understand. They have conquered 17 species by making resistance seem impossible. But we are not like other species. We do not surrender simply because we cannot win. We fight because fighting is what we are. We fight because freedom is worth more than safety. We fight because we would rather die standing than live on our knees." Her voice grew stronger. "All units across Earth, begin resistance operations immediately. Attack their supply lines. Destroy their communication centers. Make them pay for every street, every building, every handful of dirt. Show them that this world will never belong to them. Show them that humanity does not break." She ended the transmission. Around Earth, hidden radios crackled to life in basements and caves and secret rooms. Men and women who had been waiting, preparing, hoping they would never have to act, heard the commander's words. They looked at each other. They picked up weapons. They opened doors and walked out into a world filled with enemies. They had expected humanity to surrender within 48 hours. Their models predicted it. Their experience confirmed it. They had conquered 17 species, and every single one had surrendered when they realized resistance was futile. On the 49th hour, a patrol station exploded. On the 50th hour, a supply convoy outside Mumbai was ambushed and destroyed. On the 51st hour, a communications center in Brazil went dark. The resistance had begun. And they learned, for the first time in their long history, that they had made a terrible mistake. They had conquered a species that did not know how to surrender. They had awakened a fire that would not die. The war for Earth had begun. 3 months into the occupation, the High Command held an emergency meeting aboard their flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The mood was tense. The reports were troubling. Nothing was going according to plan. "Explain this," High Speaker demanded, throwing a data tablet onto the table. 67 attacks in the last week, 12 patrol stations destroyed, 4 supply depots burned. Our casualties are higher than the entire integration. His generals shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a veteran named, spoke carefully. "The humans are not fighting like a conquered species should fight. They are not protecting territory or resources. They attack and disappear. They destroy what they cannot hold. They use weapons we cannot detect and tactics we cannot predict." "They are primitives," another general said. "They should have surrendered months ago." "And yet they have not," replied coldly. "Find out why, fix it. I want this planet within 60 days. On Earth, Lieutenant led one of the most effective resistance cells in the occupied territories. She operated out of the tunnels beneath, a network of old subway lines, maintenance corridors, and passages that her team had expanded over months of careful work. Tonight they were hunting. Moved through the darkness with 15 fighters at her back. They carried weapons that looked like they belonged in museums, crossbows, spears, blades. The sensors were designed to detect energy signatures, electronic communications, modern weapons. They were not designed to detect a woman with a bow and arrow. They reached their target, a checkpoint that controlled access to the city's water treatment facility. 6 soldiers stood guard, their scales glittering under harsh artificial lights. They were bored. They were confident. They had no idea death was creeping toward them through the shadows. Raised her hand, her fighters spread out surrounding the checkpoint. She counted down silently, 3, 2, 1. Arrows flew. 4 soldiers fell before they could react. The remaining 2 raised their weapons, but fighters were already on them. It was over in seconds. "Plant the charges," ordered. 2 minutes, then we disappear. They worked quickly. The checkpoint was wired with explosives that were also invisible to sensors, simple chemical compounds mixed from household materials. They had studied human military technology. They had not studied human chemistry textbooks. 2 minutes later, the checkpoint ceased to exist. By the time reinforcements arrived and her fighters were gone, melted back into the tunnels like ghosts, they left behind only destruction and a message painted on a nearby wall: "You are not welcome here." In orbit, Captain Lee fought a different kind of war. After the initial invasion, he had escaped with a handful of loyal crew members. They had stolen a cargo shuttle and fled to the asteroid belt, where they found others who had escaped: civilians with mining ships, scientists with research vessels, soldiers with whatever they had managed to salvage. It was not a fleet. It was barely a collection of flying junk, but forged them into something dangerous. They called themselves the Void Wolves. They struck supply convoys, appearing from nowhere, destroying what they could, stealing what they needed, then vanishing into the endless darkness between rocks. They sent warships to hunt them. The warships found nothing but empty space and booby-trapped asteroids. "They're sending another patrol," sensor officer reported. 6 ships heading toward our last attack site. Studied the tactical display. "They're getting predictable. They always send 6 ships. They always follow the same search pattern." He smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Let's teach them why predictability is dangerous." 3 hours later, 4 patrol ships drifted dead in space, their crews captured, their weapons and supplies added to the Void Wolves' growing arsenal. The other 2 ships fled back to the main fleet with tales of human savagery and impossible tactics. On Mars, Doctor worked in a hidden laboratory beneath the red dust. He had escaped Earth during the chaos of the invasion, bringing with him years of research on biology. Now he was putting that research to use. "The digestive system cannot process certain compounds," he explained to the resistance leaders via encrypted transmission. Specifically, they are highly sensitive to capsaicin, found in earth peppers, and several compounds common in fermented foods. Commander Hand's voice came through the speaker. "Can you weaponize this?" "I already have. I've created an aerosol that, when inhaled, will incapacitate for 12 to 18 hours. They will be unable to move, unable to communicate, but they will not die. This is important. We are not trying to exterminate them. We are trying to defeat them." There was a pause on the other end. "Explain," said. Chose his words carefully. "If we simply kill every we encounter, we become monsters. We prove that they were right to fear us, right to try to control us. But if we defeat them while showing mercy, we prove something else. We prove that humanity can be strong and good at the same time. We prove that we deserve to be free." Another pause. "Then, send the formula. We'll begin production immediately." Meanwhile, aboard a prison ship far from Earth, Ambassador Park had not been idle. They had made a mistake keeping her alive. They thought she might be useful for propaganda, the human leader who would call for surrender, who would tell her people to accept their fate. They did not understand that would die before speaking such words. Instead, she had spent her captivity building alliances. The prison ship held prisoners from many species. Some were criminals, some were political dissidents, Some were simply people who had asked too many questions about rule. Talked to them, she listened to their stories. She learned their grievances, and she began to plant seeds. The humans are fighting, she told them. Not just soldiers, everyone, farmers, teachers, children. They are fighting because they believe freedom is worth dying for. When was the last time your people believed in something worth dying for? The prisoners listened. Some scoffed, some were afraid, but some remembered what their own people had once been before they learned to obey. Found a way to smuggle a message out of the prison ship. It traveled through secret channels, passed from hand to hand, until it reached representatives of species who had remained silent during the invasion. "We will not forget who stood silent," the message read. "We will not forget who helped. Choose wisely." 3 minor species, though the Union and the Keld, began secretly sending supplies to the human resistance. Weapons hidden in cargo containers, medicine disguised as trade goods, information about patrol patterns and command structures. The fire was spreading. High Speaker ordered a brutal crackdown. Villages suspected of harboring resistance fighters were destroyed. Prisoners were executed publicly to discourage rebellion. New restrictions were placed on human movement, human communication, human thought. It did not work. For every village destroyed, 10 new fighters joined the resistance. For every prisoner executed, 100 humans swore revenge. The crackdowns did not crush the rebellion. They fed it. 6 months into the occupation, they controlled Earth cities. They controlled the skies. They controlled space. But they did not control the people. They could not control the tunnels beneath the streets, the asteroids in the void, the hearts that burned with rage and hope. They had conquered 17 species. They had never faced anything like this. They did not know how to defeat an enemy that would not admit defeat. And deep in her mountain bunker, Commander Han began planning the next phase of the war. The resistance had survived. Now it was time to fight back. 18 months after the invasion, Commander Han stood before a holographic map that showed every position on Earth. Red dots marked enemy bases. Blue lines showed resistance networks. Yellow stars indicated targets. 7 yellow stars glowed. 7 command centers that controlled the entire occupation. If they fell, they would be blind and deaf, unable to coordinate their forces, unable to respond to attacks. It would not win the war, but it would change everything. "Operation," said to the assembled resistance leaders. "We hit all 7 simultaneously. We coordinate with Captain's fleet to attack the orbital blockade at the same moment. We show them that we are not scattered rebels hiding in holes. We are an army." Who had spent 18 months building an intelligence network that reached into every occupied city, stepped forward. "I have confirmed the locations and security details for all 7 targets. They have grown confident. They believe we are contained. They are wrong." Lieutenant studied the map with sharp eyes. "The Seoul Command Center is the most heavily defended. 800 soldiers, energy shields, automated weapons. My cell has 40 fighters." "Can you take it?" asked. Smiled. It was the smile of someone who had stopped being afraid long ago. "We've been digging tunnels for 6 months. We know that building better than the do. Give me the word, Commander. Seoul will fall." In orbit, Captain Lee received the battle plan through encrypted channels. His Void Wolves had grown from a handful of stolen ships to a fleet of 37 vessels. Still nothing compared to the Armada. But they had something they did not have. They had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. "This is it," told his captains. "We break through the blockade or we die trying. There is no middle ground, but if we succeed, we open a corridor for reinforcements, supplies, hope." One captain, a woman who had once commanded a cargo hauler and now led a squadron of converted mining ships, asked the question everyone was thinking. "What reinforcements? What supplies? We're alone out here." Smiled mysteriously. "Not as alone as you think. The Union, the Kell, they've been watching, they've been waiting. When we show them we can win, they'll show themselves. The day came. Operation began at dawn Earth time. In Seoul led her fighters through tunnels that emerged inside the command center itself. They came up through floors, through walls, through places they had never thought to guard. The first wave carried doctors incapacitating agent. Soldiers collapsed where they stood, unable to move, unable to fight, but alive. Non-lethal first, had ordered. We're not here for revenge, we're here for victory. But they recovered quickly, adapting to the chemical attack. Fighting erupted through the corridors of the command center. 40 fighters faced hundreds of soldiers. The odds were impossible. Did not care about odds. She moved through the battle like a ghost, appearing where they did not expect, striking before they could react. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Every martial art, every weapon, every tactic that her ancestors had used against invaders for thousands of years. They had studied human military doctrine. They had not studied human martial arts passed down through generations. A massive soldier blocked her path, his scales armor-thick, his claws dripping with human blood. He laughed at the small woman facing him. Did not laugh, she moved. 30 seconds later, the soldier was on the ground, his joints locked, his nerves screaming with pain from pressure points he had not known existed. Stepped over him and continued forward. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Seoul command center belonged to the resistance. 300 soldiers were captured, 200 more lay dead, had lost 19 of her 40 fighters. She mourned each one, but they had won. Across Earth, 6 other command centers fell. Not all victories were as clean as Seoul. In Cairo, the fighting lasted 12 hours and left the building in ruins. The resistance had to destroy the entire facility when they could not hold it. But by nightfall, all 7 command centers were gone. The occupation forces were blind. In orbit, Captain executed the most audacious attack of the war. His fleet approached the blockade in a scattered formation that looked like debris. The sensors registered them as wreckage, not worth investigating. Then the wreckage came alive. Had converted cargo ships into kinetic projectiles. He had stripped them of everything except engines and armor. As his combat ships engaged the warships, the cargo ships accelerated to incredible speeds and slammed into the blockade. They had shields that could stop energy weapons and missiles. They did not have shields that could stop a 100,000-ton cargo ship moving at a significant fraction of light speed. 3 battleships died in the first minute, 2 more in the second. The blockade formation shattered as surviving ships scrambled to avoid the kinetic bombardment. In the chaos, combat ships struck hard and fast, destroying weapons platforms and communication relays. "We have a corridor," his tactical officer shouted, 15 minutes before they reorganize. "Signal the resistance," ordered. "Tell them the sky is open." On the surface, resistance fighters watched as orbital superiority crumbled. For the first time in 18 months, they could see stars through the gaps in the enemy fleet. And through those gaps came ships, traders carrying weapons and medicine, Union scouts bearing intelligence and volunteers, Keld heavy freighters loaded with supplies that the resistance desperately needed. The species that had been watching had decided. They stood with humanity. Aboard her prison ship, Ambassador Park learned of the victory from guards who could not hide their fear. She also learned that a rescue was coming. The strike team that reached her ship was small, 12 humans and 3 volunteers. They cut through security systems that had been sabotaged from within by prisoners had recruited over months of careful work. They reached her cell and found her waiting, calm and composed despite 18 months of captivity. "Ambassador Park," the team leader said, "we're here to take you home." She was thin and tired, but her eyes burned with unbroken fire. "Not home," she said. "Take me to Commander Han, The war is not over. It's time I did my part. High Speaker received the reports in stunned silence. 7 command centers fallen. The orbital blockade broken. Foreign species openly supporting the humans. His perfect plan, 18 months of patient conquest, unraveling in a single day. "Bring the home fleet," he ordered. "Every ship we have. If Earth will not submit, we will burn it from orbit." His generals hesitated. One dared to speak. "High Speaker, the conquered is already questioning our actions. If we destroy Earth—" "If we do not destroy Earth," interrupted, his scales shifting to the black of absolute rage, "every conquered species will see that rebellion is possible. Every subject world will begin to wonder. The empire itself will crack. Earth must fall, whatever the cost." The message went out. The home fleet began to move. 200 warships, the mightiest armada in the galaxy, heading for Earth. Commander Han received the intelligence with grim satisfaction. This was always the plan. Draw out their full strength. Force them to commit everything. "They're coming with everything they have," she told her commanders. "Good. When they get here, they'll find we're not alone." She looked at the tactical display, where new signals were appearing. Ships from the Union, the Keld, and others. Species that had been silent. Species that had been afraid. Species that were remembering what freedom meant. "The turning point is here. Either we break them now or they break us forever. There is no tomorrow after this battle." She smiled. For the first time in 2 years, she smiled. "Let's show them what humanity can do." The home fleet arrived at Earth like a storm of metal and fire. 200 warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons charged, their crews ready for the final conquest. High Speaker stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger in the— This world had humiliated his empire. This world would now pay. "Scan for enemy forces," commanded. The tactical display lit up. Captain's fleet held position near the moon, 37 ships against 200. The numbers were laughable. The battle would be over in minutes. But then the display updated. Behind the human fleet, more ships emerged from the shadow of the moon. Cruisers with their distinctive curved hulls. Union destroyers bristling with weapons. Keld heavy battleships built for wars their species had not fought in centuries. Scales shifted uncertainly. How many? 53 ships, High Speaker, but more signals are appearing. The display continued to update. Ships from species that had not spoken against the in generations. Ships from species that had been conquered and forgotten. Ships that had been hidden, waiting, hopping for a moment like this. 112 ships, the tactical officer reported. "No, 127. High Speaker, they're still coming." High Speaker watched his perfect victory transform into something else entirely. This was not a battle against human rebels. This was a battle against half the galaxy. Commander Han watched the same tactical display from her command center on Earth. She had spent 2 years building toward this moment. Every sacrifice, every loss, every death had led here. They had awakened something they could not control. They had shown the galaxy that an empire built on fear could be resisted, and now that galaxy was responding. Her communication system activated. A familiar voice came through. "Commander Han, this is Ambassador Park. I'm aboard the flagship. They've given me a channel to broadcast to the entire fleet." Smiled, then broadcast, "Ambassador, tell them what we're fighting for." His voice went out to every ship in both fleets. Human and alien, conqueror and conquered, all heard her words. "People of the galaxy, 2 years ago the Dominion betrayed humanity. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to break. 17 species had broken before us. Why should we be different?" She paused. "We were different because we remembered what it means to be free. We fought when we could not win. We resisted when resistance was suicide. We held on to hope when hope was foolish. And today, We stand alongside species who remembered their own freedom because of our example." Her voice grew stronger. "This is not a battle between humans and this is a battle between freedom and fear. The rule through terror, through control, through the belief that resistance is impossible. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy that courage is more powerful than calculations, that the spirit of a free people cannot be measured or predicted or controlled." She addressed directly. "High Speaker, you have two choices. Withdraw your fleet and face the judgment of the galactic conquered for your crimes, or fight against an alliance that will grow with every moment this battle continues. Every species watching this moment will remember what they see. Will they see strength, or will they see weakness? Choose wisely. This is your only offer." The two fleets faced each other across the void. 200 warships against nearly 200 alliance vessels. Behind both fleets, the galaxy watched and waited. On the flagship, generals argued among themselves. Some wanted to attack immediately, to crush this rebellion before it could spread further. Others warned that victory was no longer certain, that even if they won, the cost would cripple the empire. Silence them with a look. "We are the Dominion. We have ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. We do not surrender to primitives and rebels." He turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, attack." The battle began. Captain Lee had planned for this moment. His ships moved in patterns they had never seen, combining human tactics with alien techniques learned from their new allies. Vessels created electronic interference that blinded sensors. Destroyers struck from unexpected angles. Killed battleships absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser vessels. And in the center of the Alliance formation, human ships fought with desperate courage. They had technological advantages, better shields, stronger weapons, faster drives. But technology alone does not win battles. Will wins battles. Courage wins battles. The willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than survival wins battles. 3 hours into the fight, they had lost 40 ships. The Alliance had lost 30, but more Alliance ships kept arriving. Species that had been hesitating made their choice. 3 more species declared for Earth, then 5 more, then 10 more. The fleet found itself surrounded. Watched his tactical display turn red. His fleet was taking fire from all directions. His supply lines were cut. His communications were jammed. For the first time in his long life, he faced the possibility of total defeat. "High Speaker," his senior general said quietly, "we cannot win this battle. If we continue, we lose the fleet. If we lose the fleet, we lose the empire. Our subject worlds will see our weakness. They will rebel. Everything we have built will fall." Said nothing for a long moment. His scales shifted through colors that his officers had never seen before. Finally, they settled on gray, the color of surrender. "Signal the human flagship. Tell them we accept their terms." The guns fell silent. 1 year later, Ambassador Park stood before the reformed Galactic Concord. The Great Hall had changed since humanity had first entered it as supplicants seeking acceptance. Now humans stood as equals, as liberators, as the species that had broken the Dominion's 10,000-year reign of fear. Beside stood the heroes of the war. Commander Han, who had built the resistance from nothing. Captain Lee, who had turned scattered survivors into a fleet that challenged an empire. Lieutenant, whose guerrilla tactics had become required study at military academies across the galaxy. Doctor, who had proven that humanity could fight with mercy. Whose intelligence network had made victory possible. The delegation sat in a corner of the hall, their scales the permanent gray of defeat. High Speaker was not among them. He had been removed from power by his own people, who blamed him for the disaster. Addressed the assembly. "When we first came to this hall, we came as children seeking the approval of our elders. We were naive. We were trusting. We believed that the galaxy would treat us fairly." She paused. "We were wrong. The galaxy did not treat us fairly. They used our trust against us. They planned our conquest from the moment they offered us friendship. They expected us to fail. They expected us to break. Her voice hardened. They forgot something. They measured our ships, our weapons, our numbers. They calculated our capabilities with perfect precision. But they forgot to measure our spirit. They forgot that humans have spent their entire history proving the impossible wrong. They forgot that we do not surrender simply because victory seems out of reach. She looked around the hall at the representatives of species, who had fought alongside humanity and species, who had watched from the sidelines. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Some of you helped us. We will never forget that. Some of you stood silent while we bled. We will never forget that either. And some of you may, in the future, consider humanity a species to be conquered. Remember what happened to the... Remember that we do not break. She straightened to her full height. We endure, we adapt, we overcome, and we remember. Betray us and we will resist. Attack us and we will fight. Try to conquer us, and we will show you why every species that has tried has failed. We are humanity, and the galaxy will never forget what we can do. The hall was silent. Then slowly applause began, first from then the Union, then the Keld, then species after species, standing and clapping and cheering for the people who had reminded the galaxy what courage meant. Smiled, beside her, Hannah allowed herself a moment of pride. They had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, against everything the universe had thrown at them, they had won. The stars belonged to humanity now, not because they had conquered them, but because they had earned them. And they would never let anyone take them away.